everybody. What is going on? What is going on? Hello, hello, hello. What is going on, everybody? I am early. Nobody freak out. It's not a huge deal. People are talking about Cross Guild, Mihawk. Emu might be defeated in a 6v1. There's just too many things. I don't know. Too many things. How are we feeling right now about this? Let me just ask this. Final villain. Emu Blackbeard. I think it is so cool that this keeps going. This goes both. I would love to see if there's like betting odds on this or something like that out there. Like that is one of the most fascinating things in One Piece to me, that we're this deep and it's still really up in the air. Still really up in the air. Loki says, Gen Z looking ass hair. It's just uncombed right now. It's just the way it is. Yeah, I really don't understand why Gen Z likes the like broccoli look haircut. It just doesn't make sense to me. Okay, people are leaning Blackbeard. People are leaning Blackbeard. And if you're out voting, if you're hitting the votes on the vote thing, then you might as well hit like on the stream. Let's get the stream likes up to 50 real quick. Mihawk's ableist ass won't fight nobody. There's spoilers out already? There's no way. How are there spoilers right now? Please read Kingdom before Kagurabachi? No, I'm more likely to read Kagurabachi first than Kingdom. Definitely more likely to read Kagurabachi first. Yeah, Kagurabachi is next up just because it's shorter. It's kind of like, so I recently started playing games again, and the main game I want to play is Elden Ring. But I didn't want to jump into a huge ass game, so I started with something a lot shorter. So I started with, right now, I've mentioned the last couple streams, I'm playing Black Myth Wukong. Because I don't know, it's to ease back into playing games, I guess. And also, From Software games can be, of course, very immersive and very hard to put down. But also, the bosses can just be so absurdly time consuming, right? So time consuming that, like, I could easily end up wasting a lot of hours or whatever. And Wukong has some bosses that have been genuinely really, really rough. But most of the bosses are not. Most of the bosses are fine. There's one boss. I don't even want to talk about it. This fucking yellow rat fucker. Fuck that guy. But for the most part, Wukong's been great because you can hop in, you run around a little bit, you find another boss, you fight it. Most bosses go down without too much difficulty, so you feel good about yourself. It's like, I'll keep going, I'll run into another boss, beat that, etc. And then eventually you run into a boss that's like a main boss that's like pretty hard. But yeah, that's I imagine with Elden Ring it'll be running into a lot more difficult things on average. Anyway, analogous to Kagurabachi and Kingdom, Kingdom is the one that I want to read more, but it's a big series. It's a very long series. Probably going to jump in with something simple like Kagurabachi first. Gachi Akuda, I was following the anime for that for a bit, dropped it. Just don't like it. Don't like. I might get back into it. I think I was just very disappointed with. I don't like the world. Don't like the main character too much, and I don't like the abilities or the fights. And I think that's the main thing. Please no Wukong spoilers. No Wukong spoilers. Do not spoil Wukong for me, please. I'm really enjoying not knowing much at all about the game, and just going in kind of blind. Um, yeah. In Elden Ring, you run into the same bosses like 20 times. Yeah, I mean it's hard to make like a huge open world game where every boss is really good because it functionally can't work like that. Like Bloodborne clears all Souls games. Yeah, Bloodborne is my favorite. It's my favorite game in general. I really really love Bloodborne. Um, the one thing about the one thing that I'm enjoying right now, I enjoy Wukong's combat more than any of the Souls games except for Sekiro. Sekiro is still my favorite combat, but I don't think I would enjoy hopping back into like I think I need to finish the game and then have some space, right? Have some space first away from the game because like recency bias is always a thing. Um, but I am enjoying the faster paced combat. I'm enjoying the faster paced combat. I don't think I could, in this moment, it would feel weird for me to go back to Dark Souls 3, or even Bloodborne, which is a bit more fast paced. And like, it's very, very. It's very, very slow. How do I say? It's not slow. Like, Bloodborne's faster than the Souls games, but it's still like Wukong. I guess you kind of grabbing the steering wheel a little bit, and you're kind of just in go mode, right? Because you can do very fast combos, and you can dodge in the middle of combos and keep combos going and stuff like that, and then you can power through your enemy's attacks very easy with combos or with the whatever they're called, the see through moves and stuff. I don't know. And then also you've got your spells and stuff which allow you to be more aggressive, yada yada. The main bosses in Elden Ring are pretty good slash unique. Yeah, yeah, from what I've seen. I've heard good things about Lies of P. I'll probably try that at some point. Ender saying Lies of P as well. I've heard a lot of good things about Lies of P. I've seen some people say that it's just as good, if not better, than the Soulsborne games, and then I've seen some people say that, like some people say that if it had From Software on the cover and it was made by From Software, people would be calling it like the best game ever. And then I see some people saying it's overrated. So I want to try it myself and see how I feel. Did I watch the Chainsaw Man Reese arc film or any other movies last year? I did watch some movies last year. I watched several movies in theaters last year. Um, and I did watch Chainsaw Man the Reese film. That was amazing. Best movie I saw of last year. At least in theaters. Like best anime film I've seen for sure, for sure. I think it's the best anime film out there in my opinion. Obviously there's not like a ton of competition on that front. Um, but it's the best anime film. Let me rephrase that. I think it's the best out of like popular anime series that then go in on making a big budget film for theaters. I think the Chainsaw Man movie is easily the best that's been made, um, because it elevates. It's by far the most creative in its direction. It's the most artistically done, and it gives you its best story, and it gives you everything you want action wise and more. It truly elevates the manga. Um, and it's a great arc in the manga too. Let's get Streamlikes up to 50. I always felt like the Reese arc is a little bit overrated by Chainsaw Man fans because I find it to be a good arc in the manga. I'm saying in the manga I find it to be overrated. I find it to be a good arc in the manga, but I find every Chainsaw Man arc that comes after that, at least in part one, to be better. But the movie was just phenomenal. Movie's phenomenal. And the cool thing about the Chainsaw Man movie is that you could genuinely go in, I think, not knowing Chainsaw Man and experience it just blind as an anime film and really enjoy it. Growth Stonks, thanks to the 5. Since we don't know if Loki can fly/jump, I predict before his Devil Fruit reveal, we will see Loki next chapter jump up to the Sun Realm like he did in chapter 1152. Oh yeah, let's get our predictions going. Y'all. Hold on. Here we go. Give me 1 second here. All right. Since we don't know... Okay, we will see Loki next chapter jump to the Sun Realm. We will see Loki jump to the Sun Realm like he did in 1152. We'll keep it short. That's from Growth Stonks. So you know what's interesting to me? Two things. One, we still don't know what Heaven Realm is. So I feel like Oda's maybe saving something interesting. But two, you know at the beginning of the arc when Louis Arnott had that little quote that's like, be careful in Elbaf, you can't stay too long. I'm beginning to feel like that was just Oda being Oda, and there's really not anything bad in Elbaf inherently, right? Because we now are very experienced with the Elbaf Island, right? Like we know obviously pretty much everything that's going on today outside of Heaven Realm, and we've seen a solid amount of history of Elbaf Island. We know fucking Gaban's been chilling there for God knows how long. I think it's pretty much confirmed that there's no time shenanigans or anything going on there. There's nothing bad in Elbaf. I think that was just Oda trying to find something interesting to write into the arc, you know, like towards the beginning. Because towards the beginning, there really wasn't that much going on, right? Like, I feel like Oda, when arcs are starting, Oda has a certain number of cards to play to make things exciting early on, right? So, like, the first thing that we got in Elbaf that was exciting was the reveal of Loki. So it's like, okay, that's cool. And then the next thing was the Gods, Knights, and Shamrock, but that came like several chapters, like 6 or 7 chapters later. And then after that, there's the mural, but it takes some time, and then Gaban. But there's a solid chunk of time where there's not that much exciting stuff, like to take the reader from chapter to chapter. And Shonen Jump is a very competitive place. So I would not be surprised if, like, at sometimes... I feel like this is a thing throughout One Piece. Sometimes Oda just has to create a cliffhanger at the end of the chapter to create a cliffhanger. And so, like, I think just throwing in that Louis Arnott quote of just, be careful in Elbaf, don't stay too long. It's like, why not stay too long? It's like, no reason. It's just don't do it. Just don't stay in Elbaf too long, man. It's like, okay, Oda. I even remember, I think when we got that Louis Arnott quote, Oda showed us a silhouette of Gaban walking around, and it was like, Gaban's not a bad guy. Gaban's like a good guy. Justin Holland, thanks for the 5-man. Backup from Underworld starts arriving and helps turn the tide, freeing the Straughts and saving the library. Near the end of the chapter, Loki and Luffy arrives. Okay, yeah, let's get that stuff in. Backup from Underworld starts... I got to do some specifics, right? Starts to turn the tide upstairs, freeing Straw Hats and library. Luffy and Loki arrive at end of chapter. Lil Emu 56, thanks to 5. Playing Sekiro and fighting Genichiro Ashina as we speak. Oh, that's a good fight. That's a very good fight. Need Shanks to lend some Haki knots. Second phase got me drinking, on my knees screaming Joy Boy. You know what's really funny, Lil Emu? I would love... come back Monday stream, and I don't want to spoil something about the fight, but come back on Monday stream. There's something you said that's funny. That's all I'll say. So come back on Monday stream and give us an update on how that went. The thing that I found that was cool about Sekiro is, I think just Sekiro is my favorite of the FromSoft games in terms of, favorite game in general in terms of like action. Definitely favorite game in general in terms of action. I've already made up my mind, by the way, for those of you who don't know, in Elden Ring, there is something that you can get that I've read about and watched some videos about. There's a thing that you can get that will allow you to play the game like it's Sekiro. I'm just going to go get that ASAP, because I've been wanting to play Sekiro's combat again for the longest time. For the longest time, I've been wanting to play Sekiro's combat again. It is my favorite combat in single player games. Um, but the thing about Sekiro that's really cool is I also think that it charts out its difficulty curve really, really well, where I feel like every boss is, I don't want to say harder, but like the game never stopped being reasonably difficult. Like there was never a boss that I hit that I was just like, oh, this one's too easy, if that makes sense. But it charts out the difficulty very well, where like, I don't know how to explain. Like, it charts out the difficulty in a sense that you can feel yourself getting better at the combat system and everything, and then you get to a harder boss, and it's like, oh my god, this guy's even harder than fucking whoever. But it still takes me roughly the same amount of time because I'm now better at the game as well. Like, it feels like a very consistent and reasonable level of difficulty for me across the game. That's what I liked. Left Jab 6145, thanks for the 5. Do you think Blackbeard will take over Emu's powers, becoming the giant everyone was fighting in the mural? The jaw looked like his beard. Let's take a look at that. Let's take a look at that little theory. I think that, my personal opinion, to me, Blackbeard, it's so many assumptions, right? But in my opinion, Blackbeard doesn't feel like a team fight. He said the jaw looks like his beard. I don't know if that's the case. Wait, am I sharing the... Oh my god, I'm not writing the stuff. I'm not showing you guys. Here, I've got the chapter predictions going. I'm sorry, guys. You guys got to remind me, please. Alright, so the jaw looks like his beard. I don't know about that, personally. But... I don't know if Blackbeard's set to be a team fight. In my opinion, if there's a team fight, it would be against Emu, and then I think Luffy gets Blackbeard, but... That's just things that I'm assuming, and then I don't know the order. It's just... The thing we know Luffy fights Blackbeard, so that helps us, right? So then it's just a question of, like, is it first, second, Emu, is Luffy fight Emu, yada yada, like, I don't know. I think that Luffy versus Emu in Elbaf will tell us a lot about the Blackbeard situation going forward. That'll tell us a lot about the final villain. The hell? Hold on, I gotta reload this real quick. Also, let's get stream likes up to 50 real quick. Let's get stream likes up to 50. Hold on 1 second. Endercraft, thanks to the 2. Did you see Jujutsu Kaisen Season 3, Episode 4? I've heard it was great. I have not seen it yet, simply because... Look, there's going to be some conversations this weekend. Here's the situation. Let me break down the situation, okay? So, my girlfriend likes Jujutsu Kaisen quite a bit. That was actually the first anime that she just started watching on her own, unprompted or whatever. She must have just seen something on her feed and just started watching or whatever. She likes it quite a bit. She likes the dub. Okay? The dub is a little bit behind the sub right now. I think the first 2 episodes of the dub just came out, actually. So, at the moment, we have a tenuous agreement. I watched the first 2 episodes already. I thought they were phenomenal. We have a tenuous agreement to wait for her to catch up on dub before we keep going. And then we're going to be dub watchers. It's a very tenuous agreement because I'm pretty much ready to break it. So it's quite tenuous. The argument on her end is that there are times that she's watching some show and then I'll be watching in bits and pieces, and I'm like, that show looks interesting. Okay, just wait for me to catch up and then we'll watch it together. So that has happened sometimes. So she's like, this time around you gotta wait for me. I don't know. But I think it is exaggerated how often I ask her to wait for other shows or whatever. So I'm seeing so many good things about the current Jujutsu Kaisen episodes. I think the agreement might have to be broken, so there'll be some difficult conversations this weekend. Because I'm very much looking forward to. I'm 2 episodes behind, right? Keep in mind, I know. For me, with Jujutsu Kaisen, I'm more okay waiting simply because I already know the final arc of the story. I've already read the whole final arc of the story in the manga. The Culling Games is the only arc that I haven't read. So the Culling Games is cool to me because I don't know what's going to happen, but I also know the gist of what happens based on having read the final arc. So for me, it's kind of cool to get to put the pieces together, but I'm not like urgently like, oh, I just have to find out what happens next because I know the general direction the story goes. Does that make sense? So I'm more okay with being patient for this, but now I'm seeing such rave reviews for the latest episode. I don't know how okay I'm waiting. So we're just gonna have to wait and see. I'm okay with watching it in dub. I just don't know if I want to wait that much longer. Sean Easton, thanks for the 5. Prediction: Emu will acknowledge Loki either as the king of Elbaf or as the one who slew Harold. You know, that's actually a very interesting point, the king of Elbaf, because Emu just declared Dorian... I almost couldn't get it out without laughing. Emu just declared Dory and Brogy as the kings of Elbaf. So it's like... I just don't even... Like, Emu's got to know that's like a bogus sort of crowning, right? So... Let's see what happens when Loki shows up. That is a good point. Emu will acknowledge Loki either as the king of Elbaf or the one who killed Harold. Sean Easton. 1 second. Let's get the stream likes up to 50 real quick. Grizzly Adams, thanks for being a Pirate King tier member for 29 months, man. Thanks for the long time support. Always appreciate your submissions in the Pirate King podcast. 1172 will be a full chapter reorienting us to the conflict in the sun. Prediction: Zoro and Sanji's group makes it up at the end of the chapter with a big entrance. I like that. That's a bit more of a conservative guess, right? Because I think we can imagine characters showing up at some point in the Sun Realm in this chapter. So the question is, like, does everyone show up? What's the cliffhanger? Yada, yada. So I think that's a nice conservative guess that's got a good shot of being correct. Almost entire chapter will be reorienting us with what happened in the Sun Realm. Zoro and Sanji's group will make it up at the end with a big entrance. Jordan, thanks a lot. Update on the jerseys. I predict it's a map chapter. Update on the jerseys. Here, let me send you guys over to Manga Junkies. Let's see. Because last we spoke, he's setting up basically for the pre-orders to happen. Here we go. Here. Let me drop this for you guys. If you want to check it out. Vtex, thanks a lot for the 5. Loki reveals Shanks talked to him when he was recently on Elbaf. Oh, that's a good guess, because that is still a big missing piece. And Loki's been kind of an asshole to Luffy, not telling him the Shanks information this whole time. For no real reason. Like, they should be friendly at this point. Loki reveals Shanks talked to him when he was recently on Elbaf. Here, quick question. Do you guys think Shanks shows up this arc? Let me ask you guys that. Do you think Shanks shows up this arc at Elbaf itself? Yes, no. Tiptio, thanks for being a Pirate King tier member for 9 months. If Loki is a couple levels above Pirate King tier and still isn't stronger than Shanks, it probably means that Dragon, Mihawk, Shanks are clearly above the old gen, which end of story Luffy and Blackbeard are way stronger than I thought. So here's what I would say. One, I don't think it's a couple levels above Pirate King tier. Here's my simple views. Simple views, right? And I'm keep in mind at this moment in time, I'm being very, very fluid power scaling wise because it's just too many things are up in the air. Okay, too many things are up in the air. If we take Loki's strength at face value, he should be above Pirate King tier. And also just the language that characters like Gaban and Emu have used to talk about him, especially if you go read the Viz translation for 1171. It's made pretty clear that Gaban basically says that Loki is strongest in the world. He's basically just like, I literally don't think anyone but Loki in the world could have stopped Harold, could have fought Harold, basically. So if we're taking everything at face value, Loki should be the strongest, at least 14 years ago, right? The question is like Shanks, Mihawk Dragon, did they surpass him, stuff like that, right? Here's one thing that I am thinking though, which is that you're saying if Loki's a couple tiers above Pirate King tier. I do think it's interesting that what God Valley kind of implied is that like Emu's just way above everybody else that we saw there, right? Like Rox, Roger, Garp, Whitebeard, etc. And obviously Roger and Garp and Whitebeard, they weren't all at their peaks just yet, but it didn't seem like they're far off, right? Like they're probably not far. They're like 40 years old, right? 40 years old, this is the biggest battle they're going to be in, yada yada. And Rox himself was definitely in his prime, right? So it was just like, okay, Emu is like not just a tier above Pirate King level. Emu's like 2 tiers above is what it seems like, right? That's what it seems like, you know? It makes sense. In One Piece, there usually aren't that huge gaps between tiers, right? Like, it's not like if we were to go with our previous if we were to go with our previous little detour, right? Previously, if we were to say like Joy Boy, what we used to think is like, you know, Roger, Whitebeard, Garp, I don't know, Rox, etc. are like here, right? Pirate King level, right? What it appears is as though like there's like a big gap, like Emu / Joy Boy are way up here, right? That's usually not the way things are in One Piece, right? Because it's kind of like once you go below the Roger, Whitebeard, Garp, Rox group, you probably get to like, let's say like, I would put Kaido here, Kaido, Big Mom. Some people put Kaido higher, like at the same level of the old gen, whatever. But let's say like Big Mom, like Yonko level characters. And then you go a step down. You know, this is where most people would put Admirals. Some people put Admirals alongside Yonko. But the point is that, like, you know, Big Mom's the Admirals, Kaido / Big Mom, the Admirals, like, stuff like that, right? Like, there's usually not huge gaps, right? Because even if you think, like, Roger, Whitebeard in their prime are, like, a level above Kaido and stuff like that, nobody thinks that it's a huge gap, right? It did appear from God Valley that there's a big gap between Emu and these groups, right? Because like Rox couldn't do anything to Emu, right? Rox at least is at peak level, right? And Roger and Whitebeard, or Roger and Garp, like went extreme diff with like Dami reversing Rock, like a puppet of Emu's, right? So it just seems like Emu's way above these guys, right? In One Piece, again, as I'm saying, there's not really. It's unusual for there to be huge gaps. So either Oda was just like, okay, I'm just putting Emu and Joy Boy on a totally different level than these other characters, right? Or all along, Oda was planning on there being some characters who are above this quote-unquote Pirate King level, fan term, right? So some characters that fill the void here, right? So this is where you put Loki, right? This is where you put someone like Loki, maybe Dragon, maybe Shanks. If Shanks, then maybe fucking Mihawk. Maybe the Blackblade people were right all along. Mihawk having a Blackblade puts him above Roger, Rox, etc., right? It's time that I got to start acknowledging that's a possibility. But that does make more sense, right? Because at first it feels jarring to think that, whoa, is Oda just saying that there's a lot of characters above this Pirate King level, right? Because that's not what the story's really told us. But when you step back and look at it from an author planning perspective, right, this does make sense that Oda wouldn't just have a huge gap between these characters, between like Emu and Joy Boy and then like literally everybody else in the story. To me, it does follow that there will be some characters that fill the gap here, right? Because this is where you would put like Amped Harold, right? You'd put Amped if Rox and Harold are in this tier, then Amped Harold would be a tier above, same as like Dami Reversi Rox, right? So it does make sense. I think it makes sense. It just took a bit to adjust. I'm not saying this is actually the case, right? It's entirely possible that Loki's being overrated and maybe Harold just sucked the whole time. Maybe Harold and Rox are actually a lot weaker than we thought. That doesn't seem to be the case to me. That's not implied by the story. I think if anything, Oda's really gone out of his way to establish that like these two were at least like Pirate King level or whatever. But that's what it's seeming like right now. You know, that's what it's seeming like. At the very least, if we take recent statements, like in chapter 1171, Gabon seemed to imply that Amped Harold could solo, like there's no characters on the planet that could beat him. You know, that was what was Gabon pretty much said. You know, especially if you read the Viz translation. So, yeah, sorry to go off on a tangent there, but it does somewhat make sense. It makes sense in if you take a step back and look at the grand scheme of things. Taptria Travisa, thanks for 2. The conversation is more just really lazy. What? Rox wasn't Pirate King tier. Narrator says the strongest men on the seas came to God Valley, but Rox equal to Harold didn't come. At most, he's relative to God Valley, Roger, and Garp, therefore about Yonko level. But Harold's not a man. That doesn't even make any fucking sense. He's not even this. Why would he even? That's like saying Whitebeard has the world's strongest man title, therefore he's stronger than Harold. Harold's a whole different fucking race. He's a giant, you know? Completely different category. It's already pretty clearly established that Rox, like, that doesn't even if you even by your reasoning, you yourself said that let's pretend Rox is relative to God Valley, Roger, and Garp. Let's pretend that's the case. Let's pretend that's the case, right? In that case, you would still acknowledge that Harold is part of that because Harold's equal to Rox, right? So what do you know? I don't really know what the point is there. And even if Harold is just Yonko tier, Amped Harold would be on that level, you know? The main thing is, like, what is Amped Harold implied to be at? And Amped Harold is basically, like, a world-ending threat, right? So, you know. And that's where we're trying to scale Loki to, right? Gabon says, I had a terrible vision, plain as day, of Harold venturing forth from this castle. So he's talking about how strong Amped Harold is. And laying waste to the world until it was nothing but ruins. It's hard to imagine, with the way his wounds healed themselves, that there was actually a means to stop him. Gabon is literally saying that, from his estimation, if Harold leaves the castle and goes on a rampage, the world is fucked, and there's legitimately no one that's going to stop him. That's counting all the Yonko, whoever. Yonko armies, there's not really a solution to that, right? So, whatever your opinion is of, like, normal Harold, normal Rox, or whatever, like, keep in mind, Dami Reversied Rox split the sky on his own, right? So we know Dami Reversied Rox is at the very least stronger than anybody else that we've seen. Nobody else can split the sky on their own, right? Amped Harold is probably relative to Dami Reversied Rox. We might get some established, like, clear established stuff later of, like, how big of a difference is Dami Reversi's buff versus the contract's buff. But you can assume it's probably something somewhat similar, right? So no matter how you spin it, I just don't think it's avoidable from saying that, like, yeah, it's clear that at the very least Amped Harold is above Pirate King level, you know? Because keep in mind, this is 14 years ago. Like, Whitebeard is still alive and kicking and healthy at this point in time. And he's not on fucking life support and shit, right? Gabon saying that doesn't make a fucking difference. So that's stuff to consider. Like, Whitebeard's out there, Kaido's out there, probably pretty much at his prime at that point, you know? It doesn't matter according to Gabon. All right, continuing on. Kurokami Najimi says Scopper said that because he didn't think Harold could be damaged. Yeah, like that's part of it. that's part of it, right? Uh, that's part of his overall strength, right? Loki was the only one able to overpower that immortality. And Gabon didn't think anybody else could do that. Lil Emu, thanks to the 2. Learn more about what Gabon previously said to Sanji. Learn more about what Gabon previously said to Sanji. Learn more about what Gabon... Oh, yeah. Yeah, maybe. I think that'll be saved for a little bit later. I think during Sanji's fight. Oh, shit. I gotta give the credits. Hold on. I'm sorry, everybody. 1 second. So VTech said... Oh, whoops. Okay, hold on. This is from Grizzly Adams. Sorry, Grizzly Adams. This is from VTEX 3567. It's from Lil Emu. Growth Stonks, thanks for the 5. With Emu and the Gorsei being the Earth and planets, the idea of Mars being the key to defeat them fits perfectly, because the sun is 99% of the mass in the solar system. Of mass being the key to... I read Mars. Mass being the key to defeat them fits perfectly, but the sun is 99% of the mass in the solar system. I think that's a bit of a stretch. I mean, it's just... I guess so. I think Oda's not thinking about a correlation of, like, the sun having more mass than the other things, because then it's like, well, then by that logic, it's like, is Jupiter the next strongest? Although Jupiter's all gas, so what's the planet? Which planet has the most mass? And Jupiter still has the most mass, even though it's all gas. Is that right? Tip Tio Treviso, thanks to the 2. Loki may be overrated, cope with the highest order. I mean, it's possible. Like, we can't jump on these things, like, too fast, you know? Because a lot of the statements and stuff about Loki are new, right? So, and none are, like, super duper direct, right? So it's just me interpreting things based off of, like, trying to be logically consistent, right? Because before this, people were basically saying Rocks and Herald are Pirate King level, right? So for being logically consistent, then Amped Herald, just like Dami Reversi Rocks, would clearly be above Pirate King level, right? Pretty much everyone accepted Dami Reversi Rocks, the strongest thing we've seen outside of Joy Boy and Emu, right? So same should apply to Amped Herald. Also is just consistent with what we saw. Amped Herald was basically taking on Shanks back when Shanks was fighting Mihawk for World's Strongest Swordsman. So Shanks, the World's Strongest Swordsman contender. And then Gabon, who's really not that old at that point. He's like barely past his prime. And then like hundreds of giants from the strongest army in the world, right? So like, and Herald was just walking through all of them. So that's consistent with what you would expect. That's basically Herald, Amped Herald, just walking through 2 admiral level characters and backed by the strongest army in existence. So that makes sense. So with all that being said, then Loki being able to fight him evenly, yeah, that should put Loki, if we're being consistent with what we said before, above Pirate King level characters, you know? And then based on statements from Gabon and Emu, that also seems to be where we should be putting him. But it could just be too much recency bias. Like, it could just be like jumping to conclusions a little too fast, you know? That's also possibly the case. Patrick Davis, thanks for the 10. Told you to make a chart tracking the likelihood of who the final villain will be. Cool to see spikes correlating with events. Chapter 1180, Emu kills Hadruden. Emu gets to 69%. I could, but I'm not going to do a good job remembering every week to keep track of it. Tiptio, thanks to the 2. I think Shanks fought Mihawk after Herald. That's also very possible, because there's still a window of time for that to happen. That's also very possible. We need some more details on the Shanks Mihawk stuff. What I think is very interesting is that now we've got a pretty juicy Shanks flashback coming up, because we need to understand what there's a lot of holes there, right? So like Shanks' childhood, we'll probably get some insight into that, because now we know that there's certain things emotionally that he grapples with internally. So that's 1. Then 2, Roger's final words to him. Then 3, him forming his crew. Then 4, the God's Night stint. That's really interesting. Why did he do that? What was he looking for? 5, we need to find out what happened with the whole Mihawk situation. And then 6, there's 2 major events. 1 really major event, which is the whole Loki thing, right? The battle with Loki. And then maybe we get some insight on the Shanks Kaido situation, what went down there. Maybe. Then Shanks beat Loki, blah, blah, blah. Should do a poll, who's stronger, Shanks or Mihawk? Yeah, I could do a poll. It's silly, because it's just like, what's the... We've done that poll like a million times. You'll get different results depending on which group of people you poll. I think on my channel pretty consistently Shanks wins the poll, but that doesn't mean anything, right? That's ultimately probably going to come down a lot to like, just, that doesn't mean anything conclusive, you know? That's all. I want Akainu to kill Sabo? No. That would make Luffy feel like such a failure. How many times do you think people are getting to the Shanks Mihawk debates too much? Let's recalibrate. Let's recalibrate. Enough Shanks Mihawk stuff. Anime Dimension, thanks for the 5-man. In this chapter, Jarl will get caught. In this chapter, the next one, when he is sentenced to death, Loki and Luffy will come to rescue him. In this chapter, Jarl will get caught. In this chapter or the next one, when he is sentenced to death, Loki and Luffy will come to rescue him. Jarl will get caught. In this chapter or the next one, when he is sentenced to death, Loki and Luffy will come to rescue him. Sorry, I don't know how to process that a little bit. Jarl will get caught. When he's sentenced to death, Loki and Luffy will come to rescue. I don't know why I'm having trouble processing what that means. Okay. Okay, I see. Okay. Jarl gets caught, about to be killed, but Loki and Luffy rescue him. Let's get stream likes up to 100 real quick. Kaido killing Sabo in front of Luffy and Luffy laughing about it because of Gear 5 would be peak. There would still be people out there defending Gear 5. Like, what? You don't like Luffy being goofy? That's just who Luffy is. It's like, that's not all Luffy is, though. Yeah, guys, let's get the Streetlex up. Why sentence? They can just kill him. I don't know. I included that in the thing. I just said he's about to be killed. About to be killed. Emu's order to Dorian Brogy was to kill Jarl. It takes some serious cope to think that Rox was below Pirate King tier. The Whitebeard we saw at God Value was most likely the strongest version of him that we saw, being closest to his prime, and he followed Rox. But, I mean, it's stronger than the Marine Ford version, but not stronger than the version that Roger fought in Odin's flashback, right? Yeah, but I would agree. I would agree that Rox. I would agree that God Valley Whitebeard is below Rox, and by the time Whitebeard reached his prime, he's probably equal to Rox, maybe slightly stronger, maybe slightly weaker. We don't know, but I would imagine in the same tier. The bigger thing to me though is that, like, even if you want to argue that Rox isn't exactly equal to Prime Roger and Whitebeard, he's probably not far off. And the main thing is that we saw Dami reversing Rox. That's just like a whole different beast, right? Dami reversing Rox, everybody can agree, above Pirate King tier. Like, it took Roger and Garp going all out together to defeat him, right? And that's Roger and Garp pretty close to their primes, right? Dami Reversi Rox, like, split the sky himself. That's very blatantly above any other normal character in One Piece that we've seen, right? So there's not really a debate there. And then Amped Herald should be comparable to that, you know? Tom, thanks for two. Luffy directly compares Loki's attack to Big Mom and Kaido. Interesting. More, do you think Blackbeard dies in the end, or do you think he gets sent to Impel Down, lol? I think he just gets the vague ending. I don't know if I don't think Impel Down's gonna exist at the end of story. Personally, I don't think it's gonna be a thing, because I think the whole world. I think the flood drains. I think the whole world physically shifts. So I don't think Impel Down's a thing. I don't know. Like, it's really tricky because so with Kaido and Big Mom, something very significant happened, which is that we crossed this threshold into unknown territory, where now when villains are defeated, they can't just be shipped off to Impel Down. Because before this, it was pretty simple, right? Like, Luffy defeats the bad guy gets their comeuppance, and they get sent to jail. That's pretty much what happens, right? Doflamingo beat up, sent to Impel Down, right? Crocodile beat up, sent to Impel Down, right? Hordy Jones beat up, sent to Fishman jail, right? Kaido and Big Mom, you can't really send to jail like that. So we got this unique situation where Kaido and Big Mom are defeated and they're put in lava. Saturn is very interesting when you think about it, because Saturn is one of the few times that Oda outright... Yeah, that's very interesting. Saturn's one of the few villains that Oda outright just kills. He doesn't have Luffy kill him, but he just has... He's like, Saturn is a big enough piece of shit that it's okay to kill him. NL is also a very interesting case because NL gets off extremely lightly for how terrible of a person he is. NL is one of, if not the worst characters in One Piece, just morality-wise. He gets off... NL fucking gets away with... Like, there's getting away with murder. NL gets away with genocide. Because not only does NL not go to jail, he just gets one... NL basically just gets, like, one ass whooping, and then that's it. Like, and then he actually then gets to go achieve his dream. What did Oda mean by that? What the fuck? Why does NL get to achieve his dream? It's actually really bizarre. NL is the worst of the pre-time skip villains by far, and he's the only one that doesn't actually have to go to jail, doesn't suffer any consequences, straight up gets to just go on and achieve his dream. Nothing. What the fuck? That is straight up bizarre. That is really, really strange. Enel got a happy ending. He actually did get a happy ending. He did get a happy ending. What the fuck? That's really strange. Enel got sent to the moon, but he wanted to go to the moon. And the moon's really nice. They had a better civilization up there. I guess it's not the nicest now, but he got a crew that actually likes him and wants to follow him. He got a whole bunch of subordinates. Like, he just moved on there like nothing happened. The only thing he didn't get is he wanted, like, what, 5 followers to come up with him from 4 or 5 followers to come up with him from the Earth. He didn't get that, but then he got some new followers at the moon, and then he presumably gets to rule the moon or keep going. That's really weird. I guess it's just because Oda wanted he needed to have a cover story to show us the moon hieroglyphics and stuff, so he needed to have some, some character be the first astronaut of One Piece, so Enel fit the bill. That is really unjust, though, because a lot of characters in One Piece have suffered a lot more. Like, a lot of villains in One Piece have suffered a lot more than Enel for being nowhere near as bad. Enel has a role in the future. I mean, I hope he is punished in some way. Hope he gets some comeuppance. Eric, thanks for the 2. We will cut to Jinbei and everyone will be mad. That's funny. We cut to Jinbei and everyone will be, every reader will be mad. Eric, I'm not actually going to put this down because it's too easy of a prediction. Just cutting to the other Straw Hats. Let me do this. I know you're doing kind of a joke prediction, but I'll give you this. We spend a lot of time on Jinbei, and readers are bad. Eric Terlato. Cody Abbott, thanks for being a Pirate King tier member for 5 months. Loki's already top 5 One Piece character of all time in lore, story, moments, connections-wise, but will get underrated because of being introduced this late. Thoughts? ? So I don't think it's about being introduced late, because Joy Boy is introduced late. All readers really need is, like, things that are very clear and undeniable, right? Like, clear and undeniable. Joy Boy was introduced very, very late in the story, right? Very late, but everybody immediately understands right away based off of the Haki knot shit. It's like, okay, yeah, this dude is the strongest in the story, right? It's okay to be introduced late, That's okay. But what we need, I think readers, when you're comparing to characters who have, like, literally hundreds and hundreds of chapters of established statements and being acknowledged in the world, then you need clear things established for newer characters. So what I mean is, like, we've spent the better part of the story, this 1,000-chapter long story, with characters like Roger and Whitebeard being hyped up as, like, the tippy top of things, right? Kaido, similarly, we get a lot of statements early on, like, world's strongest creature, bet on him in a 1v1, stuff like that. And then he gets a whole arc to really flex a lot of what he does. So there's a lot working there, right? But all it would really take to view a new character as stronger than these previous characters is just, like, some really concrete establishing shit, Again, like Joy Boy, Emu, people are very quick to be like, yeah. With Loki, it's tricky because he's being introduced and he's being hyped up, but we're not getting concrete statements like if somebody was just outright like if Gaban outright said something like, this Loki is stronger than my captain. He's stronger than my captain. He's stronger than any pirate. Like, if a character said something like that, or if Emu said something like, Loki's the strongest that I've seen in the last few centuries or something, that's it. Then it's not really, then the conversations kind of end. But with Loki so far, we haven't exactly had that. He's still a bit of a we've had a lot of implied statements, right? So, like, I could look at chapter 1171 and see the things that Gaban implies and be like, yeah, this is pretty much establishing Loki at the top of the food chain in the world right now. Same with Emu's implied reaction and stuff like that. But implied is not the same as concrete, right? So either you want really concrete feats or you want explicit statements by characters who know what they're talking about. Know what they're talking about is a big part, right? Like if Gabon said Loki's stronger than my captain, it's pretty cut and dry. Readers would understand. Oda wants us to understand that Loki is above Prime Roger, right? So far, Loki has implied statements, and then his feats. On paper, he has the best feat in the story, which is going toe to toe with Amped Herald, right? As far as we know, nobody else in One Piece should be able to do that. Gabon, again, implies that nobody else can. And just based on what we saw of Dami reverse seed rocks, again, Amped Herald should be stronger than anyone in the world right now, right? But it's not 100% concrete because we never got it, like, absolutely established how Prime Rocks and Herald scale to Prime Roger and Whitebeard. It's just implied that it's the same ballpark. So there's still a little bit of wiggle room and ambiguity there, right? So that's the thing. Like, let me put it simply. If during Loki's flashback it continued on and we saw Loki's rampage through the sea and we saw Loki fight Kaido and beat Kaido, or like fight Big Mom and like just wreck Big Mom, then I think the conversations kind of end because people just can there's a clear character that we've seen a lot of, like a Kaido or Big Mom, and now we get a clear point of comparison. Like, oh, Loki just is stronger than these guys, right? That's what would really help. But there's just some gaps, I think, in terms of feeling certain about Loki's strength. You know, like Harold is himself a very new character. Harold scales to Rox, who is also a very new character. Rox, we never got absolute confirmation where Rox scales to. We just get implied things, right? So that's why there's still this wiggle room and ambiguity around Loki. So even I want to be a little bit conservative, I guess, and just... But I would say based on everything that I previously believed, it follows that Loki would be stronger than Prime Roger, Prime Whitebeard. Cody Abbott, thanks for the 2. I meant character-wise, not power. Haha, true though, lol. I guess I went way too far into that. Laura Berger said, thanks for the 2. New cover story. He will get underrated because of being introduced this late. I don't think Loki will be underrated as a character. I think people really like Loki's character. Like, I think Loki is one of the best characters... To me, Loki's like the best side character we've had introduced in One Piece since Wiper. I think Loki's a phenomenal side character. He's easily one of my favorites in the story. And I think Oda pulled off something fairly impressive with him because the flashback, which was really... It's Loki's flashback, but it's also Harold's flashback, and it's also... Rox's flashback and the God Valley flashback, and amidst all of that, by the time the whole flashback concludes, I still come away from it feeling like, yeah, Loki I think was my favorite character out of everything we just saw, and I really like Rox. I think Rox is also one of my favorite One Piece characters ever. Loki versus Oldbeard? That's not even remotely close. It's not even, like, remotely close. Vroom vroom, thanks for the 5. End of arc prediction / cool idea. Luffy realizes he can't beat Imu right now. Gabon tells him to go to Garp because he's the only one who can teach Luffy Haki Mass. I don't get what the Haki Mass thing is in terms of, like, what are people talking about? Because I don't think there's anything to learn there. There's nothing new. It's just stronger Haki beats weaker Haki, right? What's there to learn? So people are pretty split about whether Shanks shows up. I never thought that Haki Mass is, like, a taught ability. It's just... Because Haki Mass isn't new, right? Like, hasn't Haki Mass always... It's not new. It's just a thing in the story, right? Like, you can just go back to Zoro versus Pika, and it's established that stronger Haki beats weaker Haki. Right? Like, this is... Did Zoro master Haki Mass? Do you really think that by cutting stone you can defeat me? I'm invincible when infused with Haki. That's assuming your Haki's greater than mine. It's not, so Zoro wins. That's Hockey mass is just phrasing something. As far as I can tell, it's just phrasing the same thing we already know, but just using a slightly different vocabulary. But it's the same exact. What's different about this than the Rocks Roger Garp scenario? It's just I'm invincible when infused with Haki, but only if your Haki is stronger than mine, right? So same thing in the Rocks Roger. This has always been a thing, right? It's just you need stronger Haki to overcome other people's Haki, right? What's different? What's new? We're not learning anything new, I don't feel like, right? I don't think there's a technique to Haki mass. It's just use strong Haki. Critical Haki mass? What is Eric says no, it's using it all at once. What? Critical mass is using all Haki at once? What? Is that what's established? I don't think that's what's established. Let's read. Let's see. It all comes down to mass, doesn't it? Okay, first of all, the colorful armor, blah, blah. He was guarding with Supreme King too. There's no damage unless we surpass that. How is that different than this? I'm invincible with Haki unless my Haki is greater than yours, right? So, what's the difference? Rox is invincible with Haki unless they can hit him with stronger Haki. So you want to hit him with a critical mass of Supreme King Haki. But that's not critical mass. That just means critical mass isn't a technique. That's just saying that that's just using the term critical, right? A critical mass, critical temperature, critical whatever. That's just used in general as a term to describe a point where a catalyst point, right? A point that passes a certain boundary. That's just the English language, right? Critical mass, critical temperature, yada yada. That's just describing basically the upper limit of something, right? So it's basically saying we need to hit him with enough Haki that surpasses. It's the same thing here. A critical mass of Haki. That's literally the definition. That's the definition of the word critical, right? It's not a technique. It's just saying there's no damage unless we surpass that. Okay, so we need to hit him with an amount of Haki that surpasses Rox's amount of Haki. That's what critical mass means. Then they just try and pour out all of their Haki in one punch. But that's not a technique. That's the same as Luffy running out of Haki after like Gear 4th or some shit, right? That's just the definition of the word critical. Like that's not a technique. That's just saying that we need to reach the critical level of Haki that surpasses Rox's Haki, right? That's when we can actually damage him. It's not using all your Haki. Cody Abbott, thanks for the 2. Will Loki Lola stuff get covered this arc? Will Loki Lola? I feel like it should, right? But does that mean there's like an additional flashback coming? Anime Dimension, thanks for the 5. Critical mass Haki is like putting all their Haki at once, just like how Zoro used Ashura. Once used, they cannot be able to move like Zoro and Wano. Look, maybe that's possible, but all I would say is that the way it's being described here, critical refers to Rox's Haki. Like the critical point wherein they surpass Rox's level of Haki. That's how it's being used here. It's not referring to a special technique they're trying to use. It's literally just like a breaking point level of Haki wherein they would overcome the amount that Rox has. That's how the word critical is used in the English language. It literally means, like, if you use critical like that in a sentence, it always means we need to do X amount to pass a critical point, right? Critical point in this situation is referring to the point at which they have enough Haki to surpass where Rox's is. Does that make sense? Like it's the breaking point. That it's the same as them saying like we need to pass the critical amount of Haki needed to damage rocks, right? They just use their strongest attack to do that, after which they're basically out of any stamina. But that's not a new technique. Critical mass equals adult gone, kinda. No, that's not how it's used in this in this scene. Critical mass. I think you guys are thinking of critical mass as being like a technique that I myself have. No. Critical in the English language, when referring to something like this, is talking about this. It's how much is needed to pass a certain breaking point, right? That's what it's referring to. It's not a technique. Eric says we know we just don't have a word for the tech yet. It's not a. But how's it? Why is it? It's not a technique. It's not a technique. It's just going all out with your final attack. What the fuck? It critical just means passing a threshold. A critical point just means passing a threshold. It just means we need to hit him with a lot of Haki. Who brought up the word critical? It's not in the manga. So, okay, if it's a translation thing, then that's a different discussion. What does it say in Japanese? The Japanese use for a word for it maximum or greatest or largest. That's an argument. That's an argument. I want to see what TCB. No, actually TCB doesn't really matter, right? I guess it does. Let me see. Let me see what TCB says. Because Viz is good for accuracy, but they're also kind of, they take a lot of liberties too. So the next time we use Conqueror's Haki, we should channel all of our mass into it. So how is this a new technique though? Isn't this just using all of your Haki in one attack? Why is this new? I don't understand why this is new. I guess we've technically never had a scene in One Piece where a character confirmed uses all of their Haki in one attack. But I kind of just assume like Luffy and like, do you think Luffy's not using all of his Haki when he uses Bajrangan? Eric says it's a tech because they use all their Haki in one attack. Is it new? No, but it's never been described before. But I don't think it's a technique then. That's just using your strongest punch, right? That's just using your strongest attack. If it's something new, I would genuinely like that because I like the idea of Luffy learning new things, but I guess I'm just confused why people. And I always wanted something new shown from the Roger and Garp fight against Rocks because, like, these are the strongest characters that we've heard of up to this point. But I'm hesitant to call things new when it doesn't feel like there's anything new. Like, we already know this. Like, there's nothing new explained here. It's literally what we already always knew, which is if you have strong Haki, it can be surpassed with stronger Haki, right? So that's nothing new there. And then using all of our Haki in one big finisher move, isn't that just the same as most like, again, why is Bajrangan not that, right? why is Kaido's final? I don't think Luffy or Kaido are holding back Haki in their final attacks, right? So I don't know. If it's something totally new, that's cool. That's good to that. I like more techniques and everything. Especially if it's something Luffy can learn, or like Luffy's or Sanji can learn, whatever. But I just don't get the sense that we really learned something new there. Also, let's get stream likes up to 100 real quick. Cody's asking, how will it play out? Loki doesn't seem like a simp. I feel like we haven't seen all aspects of Loki's character, so I think it'd be funny if I don't know, if he turns out to be a bit of a simp, I guess. But it's also not being a simp to just being romantically interested in in someone, and then sad if they're not interested in you, you know? Anime Dimension, thanks for the 10. Part 1, yes, but in this they can surpass Roxas Haki only to use their strongest attack, which leaves them completely drained once it's used. Until then, they're only using Conqueror's Haki. But isn't that... I don't get it. Part 2, at the moment they do something like plus ultra, breaking threshold, and reaching critical mass. Luffy's attacks is more Devil Fruit based with Conqueror's Haki crisp. I guess, like, let's wait and see if that's something that's clearly established. I mean, I would just add that I don't think that there was ever a point where they even hit rocks at the same time up till now, you know? So this is just them, to me, this is just them being like, well, we gotta hit him at the same time with our strongest attack, which to me isn't anything groundbreaking. I don't know. Maybe this is something that Oda does want to establish as a real thing later. Because, like, if I were to play devil's advocate for your guys' side, that this is something totally new, I remember when Roger and Whitebeard had their big clash, right? When they had their big clash, at that moment, it wasn't established that they were doing something totally new and groundbreaking. All we saw was, like, Odin being like, oh my god, they're not even touching, and visibly to the reader, we could tell, like, oh my god, this is, like, a crazy clash that feels different, but we don't really know why. Keep in mind, we, the reader, at that point in time, did not even know that advanced Conqueror's Haki, like using Conqueror's Haki coding in battle, was a thing. We'd only ever heard of armament. It is completely new to us later on, chapter 10:10, that Conqueror's coding is a thing, right? It's only in 10:10 when it was explained that it's a thing that we were able to then contextualize what Roger and Whitebeard's clash was, right? So that's pretty interesting, because it's possible that Roger and Garp are doing a totally new thing right here, like some ultra Haki move or whatever, but we're not going to get the confirmation of that till much later in the story, right? So that's possible. Lil Emu, thanks for the 5. Luffy can't use all of his Conqueror's Haki in one attack yet. That's the skill. Can't use all of his reserve. His Haki pool is larger than what he can currently use. Look, I mean, again, I think that's possible. I think that's very possible, but at the same time, it's just like, my guess is he probably put everything he had into Bajrangan. I don't think he had more Haki after that, you know? Like, to me, this is just that they've been fighting for a really long time, and that's it. Like, it'd be one thing if this was like the start of a fight, and it's like, I'd feel more confident that this is a special technique. It might be a special technique. You guys might be right? But I'd feel more confident that this is a special new technique if this was like the start of the fight, and then Roger, or like early on in their duel, and Roger and Garp were like, okay, we gotta use all of our Haki at once. I'd be like, oh my god, that's crazy, being able to use all of your Haki at once, right? Then I'd be like, wow. But it's implied that they're already going pretty hard. Like, Garp's fucking lying down and shit, right? Like, they're going pretty hard. So to me, it's already like I'm assuming they're pretty tapped out, and they're just going to use the strongest attack that they can do, and that's it, you know? Like, whatever happens after that happens, you know? Like, that's how I'm reading it. I don't view it as that different than Luffy's Bajrangan. It's just the strongest Haki attack I can do. Put my all in one big last attack, you know? If it's something new, that's great. I'd be happy to see that. But I don't read the Bajrang gunfight and think that um, that what do you call that there's more in reserve. Morge, which characters can get hit with a Bajrang gun and continue fighting? Luffy has an auto win condition if he goes all out from the start. I think we'll have to wait and see. I don't know. Bajrang may have used all of his stamina. I don't think he used all of his Conqueror's Haki. But that's what they're saying here, right? They're just talking about stamina. I don't think it's even confirmed that they're pouring out all of the Haki they have left. It's just like what's the difference? I don't know. Maybe it's something new. Maybe it's a new technique. I can see the vision. I just think it's too vague to say for sure. I might be wrong. Might be wrong. Might be wrong. Um, my favorite fight in manga is there is a really good Fire Force fight coming up. For those of you who aren't watching Fire Force, you could probably just watch season 3, like the or this core of season 3 and find it very enjoyable. I would say that. Also, I want to share with you guys something. This is a little glimpse of the future of One Dream Studio. Little glimpse of the future. Check this out. You guys want this shit? This is one of a kind. This is one of a kind. These are Devil Fruit inspired hoodies, and specifically Logia Devil Fruit inspired hoodies. So if you want to feel like you're Aokiji, go to One Dream Studio right now. The first 30 people to get this hoodie also get any 2 posters that you want free, including our exclusive Aokiji posters. We have 2 new exclusive Aokiji posters. You guys should check this shit out. I'll just drop the link for you guys here. First 30 get the free posters. This is the highest quality One Piece related, One Piece inspired clothing that you can find out there. Because this stuff is hand stitched into the fabric. Hand stitched into the fabric, 100% cotton. You will not find this type of design anywhere else, where you basically become the character who has eaten this Logia fruit. So we got Aokiji's eyes crawling up both the front and the sides and the hood of the hoodie. So definitely go check that out. Definitely get in on one of the first 30 orders. And I'll just pin that for you guys. Obligated to make a jacket fruit hoodie. You guys watch that. So there's that's just the tip of the iceberg. No pun intended. But there's some interesting stuff coming. One of a kind first 30. One of a kind as in you cannot find hoodies like this anywhere else. This is unique. Yeah, there's no other merch brand like this. Yeah, these are the first Devil Fruit inspired hoodies, specifically Logia inspired hoodies. Am I missing any? No. Okay, we're good. I missed your super chat part 3. I'm sorry, Anime Dimension. I got you. Let's continue on. Continue on the explanation. Part 3, Anime Dimension said, Luffy hasn't reached his full potential with Conqueror's Haki yet, as he only just learned it. As Gaban pointed out, Zoro is currently using Conqueror's Haki more effectively. I don't think Gaban said that. I thought he said the reverse, which is Zoro doesn't really... Or he said... What does he say? He said you seem at ease with it or something, but he also insults Zoro for not having conscious control with it. Like Luffy at least knows how to use it. I don't think Zoro knows how to use. Oh, it's 11:52. What does he say? Thanks, I've got this one. Make a mental note of how you use your color of the Supreme King. You seem quite at ease with it. What, you didn't know that? It's flowing out of you. That's what he... Okay, so it's because Zoro just lets his Conqueror's Haki leak out, which is why Gaban's like, okay, you seem at ease with it. But then Zoro reveals that he's actually not doing that of his own volition. And after that, Gaban's like actually critical of him. It's the opposite. He's basically saying that it's only useful when you consciously control it. Luffy can consciously control it, which is what he says right here, right? He's like, be careful how you use it. Luffy's like, I got it, right? With Zoro, it's like, you don't even know you're using it. So as far as I can tell, Zoro's a step back from Luffy and Conqueror's Haki control. I don't think it'd be a good look if Zoro was already able to use it as well as Luffy, because that actually is Zoro downscale, as they would say. You want Zoro to be unrefined in using it up till now, because that implies that Zoro isn't even, he's not really tapping into his full potential, you know? Like, Zoro can do a lot better than what he did in the King fight. To me, it's kind of like when Luffy first started using Advanced Conqueror's Haki, if you remember, when he first started using it in chapter 1010 against Kaido, he did well with it for a little bit, but then he got kicked off the roof. It was really once Luffy got a little bit of a break, ate some meat, came back, that was when he got a real handle on it, and that's when he could split the sky with Kaido and everything like that, and then he was just boxing with Kaido for like 20 chapters, right? To me, when Zoro starts using it against King, that's kind of like similar to when Luffy first started using it in chapter 1010. Like, Zoro is not at a point yet where he's going to be splitting the sky with anybody, but that's because he doesn't have a handle on it just yet. That's my interpretation, you know? Like, even Luffy wasn't sky splitting with Conqueror's Haki right off the bat. He had to do a couple tries. So Zoro has really only had one full go at it where he's just using Conqueror's Haki the full time. Ashura, it's a one-off. I think Ashura is Zoro's endgame, where he's going to be able to use Ashura in general. But that's not going to be the case till he can just master using Conqueror's Haki whenever he wants to. Yeah, I think Zoro probably doesn't know Advanced Conqueror's Haki. Enma's just forcing out his Haki on a high level that results in Advanced Conqueror's Haki. I do think, like, again, this is not saying that Enma is giving Zoro that power, right? But Enma is a nice little plot device for Zoro because Oda Oda gave Luffy, so, how do I say this? You gotta remember that with Luffy gets so much more screen time and focus, right? So it's not really, Oda has to come up with some shortcuts for other characters on the Straw Hats, because with Luffy, he had he gets so many fights, right? He got Doflamingo, all of Whole Cake Island to practice observation Haki and stuff. And then in Wano, he gets like his own personal trainer for 2 weeks, a Haki master like Hyogoro. He gets to practice against Big Mom in prison, so he gets a Haki bloom in prison, like during this training regimen. He got a fight against Kaido in Act 1, so he started to learn a little, like he got to observe like Advanced Conqueror's Haki being used against him. He got to put that together on the roof. Like, Luffy's getting so many more opportunities to learn, put things together, try things out, get better at things. Therefore, Oda had to come up with something like Enma for Zoro, because he needs Zoro to also get those power-ups, right? But Zoro's not going to get as much screen time and focus as Luffy, right? So to rectify that, Oda's just like, well, here's a sword for Zoro that's going to automatically just yank out some of his Haki, just by virtue of the nature of the sword itself, right? It's still Zoro's own latent abilities. It's just sort of bypassing Zoro having to learn to pull it out himself. But now he's at a point where it's like, okay, if you really want to be using it consistently, you got to learn to you got to learn how to control it yourself, right? So again, that's not to say Zoro's weak or worse than Luffy or not whatever. It's just one character gets a million opportunities to train and learn, the other character doesn't. Therefore, you got to give the character a little bit of a shortcut, which is this sword is just going to yank some haki out of you, right? That is why I'm very curious about the Sanji situation, because at least with Zoro, Oda was building on the haki foundation, right? Like, from what we could tell, Enma initially was pulling out advanced armament haki from Zoro, right? And then by the end of the King fight, Zoro learned to just like let all of his haki out through Enma, and that meant like Conqueror's haki as well. That was the implication. But with Sanji, Oda really did not. I just don't get it. Like, why is Oda not giving Sanji opportunities to improve his observation at the least, or his armament? That's the big thing about the exoskeleton that's always going to baffle me. The exoskeleton functionally does what really good armament haki does. But why not just have Sanji get better at the armament haki? Because that's a necessary step on the path to Conqueror's haki. I just don't get it. Enma is haki Viagra? That's a funny way to put it. Oda never said that Ashura is Haoshoku. It's an assumption. Assumption, or you could also call it reading comprehension. Like, it's just reading comprehension. Isaac Gavey 7762, thanks for the 5. When Sanji unlocks his Conquerors, he's going to be able to use it defensively like Rocks did. Fossil, Zoro use Enma like a jump box. Enma like a jump box? I don't know. We'll see. It's true that some characters don't seem to use Conqueror's haki to just coat themselves in heavy defense, you know? Like, Luffy doesn't do that. Zoro doesn't do that. I don't know if like Shanks or Mihawk do that either. It seems like they prefer to just use it offensively. More so Sanji can have a separate boost alongside just Haki. But now he's so far behind the Haki trading path, right? Like, why not just get him to the Haki stuff, you know? More thoughts on the Shanks theory I dropped earlier. What is the Shanks theory you dropped earlier? What is the Shanks theory you dropped earlier? Crypto, what's the Shanks theory you dropped earlier? I'm not seeing something. Yeah, just if you could reiterate that, that would be appreciated. Yeah, Big Mom from childhood, it seems like, was coating herself with Haki. Kaido, it seems, does as well. But Kaido, it's interestingly also implied to be his scales, which is just very... Because Luffy and Udon is talking about how, like, Kaido's body is covered with scales that make him extra hard to damage. So Kaido seems like to be a combination. I think both... Prime Whitebeard also seem to have Haki just naturally hot, like, some, like, Haki... what do you call... guard around him or something like that, because we saw that the big bomb that was dropped in here, let's see, not 65, it would be like 56, no 57. Yeah, like if you look here, like, Shiki drops a bomb in to kill Whitebeard and Kaido. It blows up. and then Whitebeard and Kaido just step out unscathed, while Silver Axe is severely damaged, right? So I think when, like, it's just crazy how much. I think sometimes people really forget just the level characters were at during this God Valley situation, because like it's easy to say, well, Whitebeard wasn't in his prime yet and stuff like that, but what people forget is Whitebeard in this flashback is significantly stronger than Marineford, right? So even if he's not at his prime, it's just important to remember certain things. Like the characters in this flashback aren't weak. They're all above, like not all, but like Whitebeard is above Marineford Whitebeard level, right? It doesn't feel like that because in some ways, because Marineford Whitebeard was at the helm of this giant fleet in this like the center of the biggest war happening in the world. But it's easy to forget that the level was just higher back then. So like even though in this era Whitebeard is just one character in this ragtag group of the Rocks Pirates, back then that version of Whitebeard was significantly stronger than the fucking Marineford one that was being hyped to all hell as the world's strongest man, right? So it's just crazy how different the level is during this whole God Valley flashback. But again, another little example is like back like in the Marineford thing, every little thing damaged Whitebeard, because he could not use Conqueror's Haki during that battle. That was very clearly established, right? Back then, Whitebeard, like, he's a tank. He's actually a tank. Like, he's the same as Kaido and Big Mom in that, like, normal things don't really damage him, you know? It's pretty interesting. Yeah, it's very close. I feel like Whitebeard reaches his prime like very shortly after the God Valley flashback. You know what's crazy? Ace won against Jinbei before joining Whitebeard, and Oldbeard was trashing Ace in his sleep. That's how crazy the differences are. Yeah, it's pretty insane. People think Whitebeard and Roger aren't prime in God Valley because their blades touched in the clash. I mean, I don't think they're in their prime, but I think they're very close. But it's also just important to remember characters don't go all out in every clash. You know, like Luffy and Kaido. You know, when they go for big clashes, they're not touching. But there's plenty of panels where they are making contact. You know. I don't think God Valley's his prime because like there's even that chapter that says that the most of the characters from God Valley reach their primes later on. And that's coming from like I keep in mind again, I like to believe that I can when it comes to power scaling, I can adjust with new information. If you guys recall, during God Valley, during the Rocks battle, Roger and Garp versus Rocks, I was arguing after that battle ended, I was like, these characters are probably in their prime right now. I was like, they're 39 and 40 years old. That should be their primes, right? Like, that's the same age Shanks is right now or older. So I was just like, I was very adamant that Roger and Garp are probably at their best there. But then we got another chapter that said that, like, the God Valley characters went on to reach their primes later on. So I was like, okay, I guess Roger and Garp weren't at their absolute best just yet, you know? Their blades didn't touch because they were shy. Their blades touched? Ayo. I agree 40-year-old Roger should be around his prime. Shanks is currently 39. I agree with that sentiment, but I'm going to change my opinion if the author says differently, you know? And Oda said is it 66? Maybe 67? The pirates who scattered to the winds after God Valley would grow in power over the next decade or two until they reached their primes and became the faces of their era. All the while, blah, 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 blah. This, to be fair, could be referring specifically to Kaido, Whitebeard, and Big Mom. This seems to be specifically to Kaido, Whitebeard, and Big Mom. Because it then classifies Shiki. It seems to be talking about three different categories of characters, right? So Kaido, Whitebeard, and Big Mom, the Yonko. Then it's referring specifically to the pirates around them, Wangzi and Shiki, claiming territory. And then finally it gets to the Roger pirates. So it's possible Roger was at his prime. I think this part is ambiguous. But Kaido, Whitebeard, and Big Mom were not. Kaido, Whitebeard reached his prime in his late 40s/50s, if that statement is true. No, over the next decade or two, this is covering three characters who are all very different ages. So this has to cover all of them, right? That doesn't mean that Whitebeard took 10 years. According to some magazine, an official magazine, with Oda statements or whatever, Whitebeard reached his prime like 2 years after God Valley. So it's not far off. So, because that is over the next decade. But you got to keep in mind, like, these three characters are very different ages. They're going to be hitting their prime over the next decade or two, right? For Kaido, it's probably 2. For Big Mom, maybe 1. Whitebeard, a few years. But it's to my interpretation is it's not necessarily referring to Roger, but it could be. Kaido is 21, same age as Zoro, and he did not show any advanced Haki. He should be weaker than Yamato, Zoro, etc. there. You got to remember that Oda tends to, for the Straw Hats, Oda's just really accelerated the rate of growth. It's like they're the main characters, right? So I wouldn't use them as the standard. I think if you look outside of the Straw Hats, Oda has a much more slow-paced growth rate for other characters, right? Like Shanks, even in like his 30s or whatever, wasn't 30s or like Shanks, whatever age Shanks was 14 years ago, so 20s. Sorry, Shanks back then wasn't as strong as he is now. Like Whitebeard, Kaido. Like Kaido's 21, but he's not. Like it's probably some time before he gets to his prime. No signs of advanced Conqueror's Haki and stuff like that. Like Oda just goes slower with all of these other characters, right? Shaker Magnus, thanks for the 5. Recently, you've been much less resistant to the idea of Sanji getting Conqueror's Haki. Did you change your mind or just soften your stance? That's a good question. Did I change my mind or soften my stance? Did I change my mind or soften my stance? I think I probably softened my stance because I want Sanji to have Conqueror's Haki. I think ever since Gabon was revealed to have Conqueror's Haki, more and more it's felt right to me that Sanji should, because I don't like the idea of Luffy having 2 wings, but he doesn't have 2 Conquerors under him. I don't like that idea. So I would rather Sanji have Conqueror's Haki. I would like that. So to me, it feels what I want for the character. It feels like what I want for the character. There's other characters, like, I also like to point out lots of times that just because people like a character a lot and this character is strong doesn't mean that they are a Conqueror's Haki user, right? Like, you have to look at the character themselves, right? Kizaru, very strong character. He is the opposite in terms of personality for a Conqueror's Haki user, right? Like, that's just the case for certain characters. You need moments of really, really strong will for Oda to be writing you as a Conqueror's Haki user in general, right? Sanji does have moments like that in the story. It is just less frequent than Luffy and Zoro, but I could see Sanji fitting the mold for Conqueror's Haki, right? So I could see him fitting the mold. And Gabon makes me, like, seeing Gabon, I really like Scopper Gabon. Scopper Gabon has quickly become, Oda's just 3 phenomenal side characters. Short tangent, but he's really killing it with Elbaf and the side characters he's introducing. Loki, Rox, Gabon, 3 new additions to the story. Great characters. Gabon, technically, we got a moment in the Odin flashback, but I wouldn't really count that. Love those characters. Harold, even him, mixed feelings, but I overall like him. Anyway, uh, I I think I want to see Sanji get Conqueror's Haki. I don't know if I'm being fully logical with it at this point because I don't know if I like truly believe that all the setup is there for him to have it, but I like to believe he will get it. So I'm softening my stance, I guess. And the other thing is, the main thing for me is I'm just absolutely baffled by Oda's route of upgrades, and particularly the whole fucking like side uh side detour route that Oda went with Sanji in terms of his power-ups and upgrades between Whole Cake Island through Wano. Because I just don't want it to feel too rushed or too forced. I mean, like, because Sanji's just really fucking far. I mean, Kobe got potentially. We don't know exactly what Honesty Impact is, but Kobe got advanced Conqueror's Haki out of the blue, so maybe it's fine. But you just look at like all the steps and all of the writing that Luffy went through to get advanced Conqueror's Haki. Like it was a lot, you know, like Hyogoro training, but not just Hyogoro training. Like it took a Big Mom little skirmish in Udon for Luffy to have his first little Haki bloom. On top of that, Luffy was able to reference back to the Kaido fight that he had in Act 1, and then 2 more weeks of training in Udon, and then finally fighting Kaido again on the rooftop, and then like one more Eureka moment for him to really put it all together for Advanced Conqueror's Haki. For Zoro, Oda gave him a shortcut with Enma, so Zoro didn't have to figure it out quite as much. Zoro was just able to, the sword like forced him to pull out his Conqueror's Haki. So there's a lot of things. But with Sanji, it's just really bizarre because he doesn't even show black coating on his kicks yet. So it's just so far away from Advanced Conqueror's Haki. Like, if Advanced Conqueror's Haki is the highest level of Haki that someone can have, right? It's the highest level of Haki. Sanji doesn't even show black coating, which is the lowest level of Haki, right? We know there's armament. Sanji definitely uses armament. But, like, armament's like 0, like ground 0, right? Just being able to use armament. Being able to use armament observation, that's ground 0. When we start seeing slightly more developed Haki techniques, it's usually, okay, black coating, right? Sanji's never officially definitely shown that. And so it's just like, why did Oda not at least get, like, he could have skipped the whole exoskeleton thing and just had Sanji like at least do black coating or develop his armament more in Wano. That's what's really baffling to me, which is like, why go this whole route with Sanji, you know? Miss Super Chat from Laura Burger. My bad, Laura Burger. My bad. Hold on. Thank you for the catch. Lawyer Burger. Sorry, Lawyer Burger. That's a good name. Basically, my mentality was kind of like, Oda's going this whole route of really turning Sanji into this science experiment, yada yada, the power of science and all of that stuff, and very aggressively refusing to update Sanji's Haki skills whatsoever. So at a certain point, I was just like, why? He just doesn't seem like he's going to be a Conqueror's Haki user. Looking back at like moments Sanji's had in the story, I think he could have the traits of a Conqueror's Haki user. He's definitely got a better argument than like Sabo or Law by a long shot. I think that's a gray area. Does Sanji have the qualities that we see consistent with the Conqueror's Haki user, right? In terms of great moments of will and all of that stuff. I think Sanji has very strong moments of resolve, right? So that does fit to some degree. And then Gaban is a big selling point. But then the flip side is just like, why is Oda just refused to make him good at Haki for the story so far? New cover story, says Lorisberger. There's a new cover story? Did it start in this chapter? Did it start in 1171? Oh, that's your prediction. My bad. That's an interesting prediction. It can't be worse than the last cover story. Zolden, thanks for being a Pirate King tier member for 29 months, man. Always good to see you. Hey, Morge, what are your thoughts on Jujutsu Kaisen Season 3? I've liked it, but Episode 3 was genuinely hilarious with how much of an info dump it was. So I talked about this a little bit towards the beginning of this stream. I've seen the first 2 episodes. Really loved them. Really loved the animation style. Felt very artsy. Felt really cool. Love the vibe. I was initially confused by the culling games because episode 2 ends with like a big drop of the rules of the culling games, and it's like, what? This is a very fast info drop because it just flashes the rules, and it's like a very extensive rule set, so it just flashes the rules really quick, and I'm like, what the fuck? But I've heard that episode 3, like you just said, is a big info dump, so I guess everything will be clarified in that episode. So I'm like, okay, that's fine. Episode 4 I've heard just came out and is phenomenal. The problem is, my girlfriend has also become a big Jujutsu Kaisen fan, and she is a dub watcher. She's asking that we wait till certain dub episode stuff come out, and then we watch it together. I am going to try to stick to that to some degree, but I said at the beginning of the stream, might have to have some difficult conversations this weekend, because I really want to watch episode 4, because I've seen and hearing so many good things about episode 4. The culling games is interesting, though, because I've explained this before as well, but I know I've read the final arc of Jujutsu Kaisen. The culling games is the only Jujutsu Kaisen arc that I have not read. So I'm not like on the edge of my seat, like, oh, I'm just craving to find out what happens in the next episode, because even though I don't know the details of what happens in the culling games, I know the gist of what outcomes are and broad story developments because I've read the final arc, right? So for me, it's culling games is a sweet spot where it feels like I'm getting new material, new stuff that I've never seen before, and I'm happy to be surprised. But I'm also not like itching to find out what happens next, because I'm just like, damn, I can't imagine where the story goes, yada yada, right? So that's why I'm a kind of fine waiting. But when I hear that the episode's really good, I become a little bit less fine waiting. So we're gonna find out. We'll see if there's some leniency in this. But we'll see. Fatingo, thanks for being a Yonko tier member for 31 months. The thanks I need a light moment is enough to convince me Sanji has the makings of a Conqueror's Haki user. I know strong will is not all, but still. I think that's a strong argument. I think that Sanji's got a couple moments that are fairly strong will in the story. I think that's a good argument. At the same time, I don't think that every character who has a strong will would be a Conqueror's Haki user, because then like Kyros is a Conqueror's Haki user. To me, Conqueror's Haki users from what we've seen are characters with like transcendentally great wills, like larger than life stuff. I don't know if I've seen that with Sanji, but I also don't think Sanji's going to be one of the strongest Conqueror's Haki users we've ever had. So, just gotta wait and see. Shaker Magnus, thanks for the 5. To be fair, if we're going with the idea that Ashura's advanced Conqueror's Haki, then Zoro skipped a lot of steps. That is also true. That is also very, very, very true. But Zoro's always done that in the story, right? Because he skipped to apparently observation and advanced armament in the Mr. 1 fight. So Zoro's just good at like, he's got a natural ability, it seems like, in near-death scenarios to tap into Haki. So that is a very good point. But then the flip side is the learning to control it and master it, right? Zoro didn't do that even like across the entirety of pre-time skip, right? And he was already tapping into Haki as of the Mr. 1 fight. So, like, it's just, we're in the final saga, and there's really just maybe 1-2 arcs to go. So for Sanji to be a competent advanced Conqueror's Haki user, I just don't want Oda to like fully rush it. I don't know. Meek, thanks for the 5. New Ragnar ability shown. Double points if it's a fire/magma ability. I feel like that might be too simple. I feel like that might be a little bit too simple of a prediction. I'll give it to you, Meek, because we don't have a ton of predictions here. But that's towing the line. New Ragnar ability shown. I'm going to say, I'm going to give you the points if it's a fire/magma ability. Let me do a poll for you guys. Will Sanji be a Conqueror's Haki user. One thing I'm still holding out for is for Usopp to be a Conqueror's Haki user. Because Usopp had, like, that's the other thing. In terms of, like, moments of, like, extreme, like, iconic willpower moments or whatever, in the crew, it's Luffy, Zoro, Usopp, and then Sanji in terms of extreme moments of willpower. So that's, like, another catch, which is, like, if I'm just going with, like, just raw based on the characters, Usopp is more likely to have it than Sanji. But I would not like Usopp getting it before Sanji if that's going to be the case. I think Sanji would not like that. And I know that Oda sometimes likes to troll Sanji as a character, but I just think Sanji should have it. I think Sanji should have it, especially if Usopp's going to get it. So it'd be cool if, like, Sanji gets it this arc, then Usopp gets it another arc. I think that'd be good. Miss Super from Paul Paul. What am I doing? Thanks, man. Paul, thanks for the 2. Prediction, Luffy finds the One Piece end of story. That is a very good prediction. That's a very good prediction, man. I personally believe it. I believe it. Okay, so now, at this point, it's a very popular idea. I think in the past, it was closer to 50-50, but I think at this point, people are basically on board. Diptio Treviso, thanks for the 2. I think Sanji has to be Pirate King level end of story. I don't know about that. I don't know about that. I don't think Usopp will ever be an advanced Conqueror's Haki user. Like, I don't think I imagine him using it in combat. But it's... Remember, Conqueror's Haki used to be symbolic. Up until chapter 1010, it was just a symbolic thing. It's like, oh, this character happens to have Conqueror's Haki user. That says a lot about their character, right? For the longest time, we would just meet characters like Doflamingo and shit like that who have Conqueror's Haki, and it's a symbolic thing, right? So I think Usopp will have it in that sense. I don't think Usopp will be able to use it in combat. He caps at Yonko, in my opinion. Yeah, and Yonko's very high in the story. Like, I know the levels are getting kind of crazy now, but Yonko's really fucking high. Yonko's very high. What does Advanced Conqueror's Haki even do for ranged users? I mean, we know it can be used on projectiles. Like, they were using it on arrows in Amazon Lily. One wing will not outshine the other, says Fooly Cooly. Now, that's just being... I think that's a little too Sanji biased, because I don't know if there's a single arc where Zoro doesn't outshine Sanji, at least in combat. I think there's... Maybe you could argue Thriller Bark. I think Thriller Bark is one arc where I think Sanji does just as good as Zoro against Oars. But besides that, there's not a single arc where Zoro is not outshining Sanji in combat. Obsidian Angel, thanks for the 2. Yara will be revealed to be the 1% man. Wait, you think the arrows were Advanced Conqueror's Haki? No, just they were coated with Haki, right? So I assume that it could probably be coated with Advanced Conqueror's Haki, right? That's hella gas for the Amazons. Zoro did better against Kuma than Sanji did in Thriller Bark. Yeah, that's true. That's true. But Sanji didn't use Diablo Jambe. I kind of look at the Oars fight more because that's when characters were fresh and they're kind of like emptying the clip. Against Kuma, everyone was kind of tapped out, you know? Whole cake if you count it. Zoro wasn't there. Skypiea? Skypiea is probably one of the worst arcs in terms of like comparing Zoro and Sanji in terms of combat, because Zoro soloed the strongest priest mid difficulty, whereas like Sanji struggled hard against Satori. like Luffy ultimately was the one who was able to catch Satori, but like even as a team effort, Luffy's Sanji and Usopp were all struggling against Satori. And there's no point where it looks like Sanji's got a handle on fighting Satori. Zoro didn't use Ashura? That's true. That's true. So you think Sanji could beat Kaido eventually? I don't know how strong characters are going to get in the story. I know the scale is ramping up quite a bit. The scale's going up. But I just don't know how far Oda's going to go with it. I'm just saying in terms of what the Straw Hats did in Thriller Bark, right? In terms of what they did, I think Sanji might have looked even better than Zoro against Oars. You know? Enies Lobby? I don't think Sanji outshines Zoro in combat in Enies Lobby. Sanji could also beat any priest except Fatty. Others don't use as much observation. But that's not what the discussion is. That's what's frustrating. People are like, well, Zoro didn't use Ashura. Sanji could have done this against this other priest or whatever. That's not what my simple point is just there's not really arcs where Sanji outshines Zoro in combat in terms of what they actually do, right? Not in terms of, well, hypothetically Sanji could have done this or hypothetically Zoro could have done that, right? I'd say Thriller Bark is the one arc where I'm like, I think Sanji looked better, slightly, or as good against Oars as Zoro. You want to get into hypotheticals, it's like, that's not even cool. That's in like Two Piece. That's in your head, right? Whole Cake Island. That Zoro's not there. So if the argument is that like Zoro needs to be literally non-existent for Sanji to outshine Zoro in an arc, then it's like, well, well, I guess you get that, but that doesn't really help the whole like the wings will always have equal combat showings things. It's like, but that logic, Chopper outshines Zoro in Whole Cake Island. Like that's technically true. Zoro fought Ryuma before fighting Oars. Okay, if you want to give Zoro Thriller Bark, we can give Zoro Thriller Bark. Like, I think there's arcs are basically either all I'm addressing was the statement that like the one of the wings is not going to outshine the other. I'm like, that's kind of crazy because Zoro does that to Sanji almost every single arc, and then there's some arcs where it's like debatable, where it becomes more like, well, what do you value, you know? But in general, Zoro's always going to get better combat feats than Sanji. Baratier. In Baratier, Zoro loses to Mihawk and Sanji loses to Jin. So I feel like I don't know if that's the best argument. The thing about Sanji is going to be Pirate King level. Who's going to confirm that? He needs to fight a Pirate King level person. So here's my... I think that... how do I say this? I think that Sanji's probably going to be one of the more controversial characters to rank, end of story. Because what often happens with Sanji is he gets... in like the big arcs where everybody gets fights or whatever, like Sanji will... My prediction is that Sanji will get an end of story fight that he wins, but just not with as much difficulty as Luffy or Zoro's final fights. And therefore Sanji will be very hard to rank because we won't know exactly where to place him. I think a similar example is like the Queen situation, right? Like Sanji, once he starts using his power up, which is Ifrit Jambe, steamrolls Queen, right? Like Sanji with Ifrit Jambe is significantly stronger than Queen, correct? Significantly stronger than Queen, but that leaves it very open-ended and debatable as to how strong Sanji actually is. Because once you steamroll your opponent, then it's kind of like, okay, well, now where do we place this dude, right? Like, so that's why there's still debates. Like, you will see people say that I see the full range. I see some people say Sanji is Yonko's second commander level because he beat Queen. I see people say he's clearly Yonko first mate level. I see debates about how Sanji versus King would go. I see people saying that Sanji is just dead even with Zoro. So wherever you put Zoro is where you got to put Sanji, right? So I personally feel like end of story, it's going to be a similar scenario. I think that there will be a lot of ambiguity, especially with Sanji, because with Zoro, I think no matter what, he's going to get like an extreme difficulty fight at the end of the story, whoever his final opponent is. Because Oda does that very often with Zoro, right? Not very often, but I think it's just a bit more likely. And just knowing his final duel is likely going to be for World's Strongest Swordsman or whatever, it's not going to be like an easy fight, right? So I think with Zoro, we'll probably be able to place him with a good degree of accuracy. I would not be surprised if Sanji's final fight is like I wouldn't be surprised if something like this happens. Sanji fights like an admiral level character, like some admiral level character, like Kizaru or something like that, and then Sanji wins decently, like with decent difficulty, but not like crazy high. Like he's not gonna be at the brink of death, because Sanji usually isn't at the brink of death at the end of his fights, right? And then that will lead to a whole bunch of question marks about him, where you will have one faction saying that, okay, Sanji's admiral level because his final opponent was like that. You'll have people being like, no, Sanji's clearly above that, right? Because he won with this much difficulty. And then you'll have a faction just saying that Sanji is dead even with Zoro, because that's just where he's supposed to be. I think that's my guess. I feel like end of story, we're going to be having the same sort of wide range of placements for Sanji as we have today, just scaled up several notches. So prepare for similar debates once One Piece is all said and done. Yeah, see, like, even just me getting into this topic has opened up, like, if I just scroll through this chat, I will find, like, several different interpretations of the whole Sanji, Queen, Zoro, King, like, all of that stuff. Like, I'll find several different interpretations. And based on those interpretations, some people put Sanji, like, close to Queen, like, not much above Queen, and some people put Sanji well above King and, like, equal to Zoro, right? Like, I think that that's going to be the same thing, end of story, just, like, several tiers up. My prediction is Sanji will fight someone who is probably like admiral level or something like that, beat him with medium high difficulty or something, and then that leaves us with a shit ton of questions about Sanji. That's how I feel. I know people might be like, why can't Sanji have a Yonko level opponent? You think Yonko level opponents like grow on trees? You think there's just like, you can just pluck him off of branches and be like, here, Sanji, you fight this dude who's as strong as Kaido. Kaidos don't just grow on trees. There's really only one or two Kaidos and Big Moms in the world, right? Like, there are not that many of them, right? So if you've got some ideas of who Sanji's final opponent will be, that's like Yonko level, I would love to hear them. I'm looking at the Gorosei, I'm like, it's not these fuckers. I'm looking at the God's Knights, I'm like, it's definitely not these dudes. I'm looking at the Blackbeard Pirates, I'm like, it's definitely not these dudes. So, I don't know, you know? Zoro's got his safe space. He's got Mihawk. He's going to fight Mihawk or some variant of Mihawk, like Dami Reversied Mihawk or Seraphim Mihawk or some shit like that. So Zoro's got his final opponent locked up. It's just a question of, like, how strong will that, like, it's going to be at least Yonko level, give or take, right? Maybe above. We don't know. So Zoro, we got something sealed away, right? That's why Zoro fans are, like, happy and then sometimes just spend all their time jerking off Mihawk because they're like, oh my god, imagine if Mihawk's like the third strongest character of all time after Emu and Joy Boy, right? Like that's where their fantasies like to go, right? Sanji, I'm sure he will have a strong opponent and a story, but I don't know what Yonko level opponent he would fight. So I feel like it's going to be someone in the Admiral Gorosei range, and Sanji will beat him medium high difficulty, like his fights usually go. and then we will have 50 years more debate of Zoro and Sanji's strength and scaling. Lil Emu, thanks for the 2. Finally got to phase 3. Yeah, I'm sorry if I spoiled you with my I was joking about it a little bit, but yeah, for the record, I knew about Genichiro's phase 3 beforehand because I had been spoiled, I believe, on stream, because I told people I was playing Sekiro or whatever, so somebody mentioned Genichiro Lightning or whatever. I hadn't even gotten to Genichiro as a boss yet or whatever. But somebody spoiled that there's a lightning or something, like a boss that's coming up that has lightning or something, from what I recall, something like that. I got spoiled in some way, so I knew that I don't mind about spoiling the rest of you guys because this game's been out for like a good amount of time or whatever, and this is just one boss in the game. It's not like the most important boss or whatever, but yeah, the phase 3, it like all I can say, Lilimu, phase 3 is easy. It's almost easier than the other 2 phases. It just feels scary because there's lightning everywhere. But the lightning will actually do significant damage to him because all you have to do is do a lightning reversal, and lightning reversals are actually very easy. You just have to jump, and I used to think you had to deflect in midair and then attack with the lightning reversal. But as it turns out, I found out much later on, after I'd beaten the game, that like you actually just have to jump and then press the attack button and you do a lightning reversal. So the third phase is actually easier than the last 2. His moveset is very similar to the last 2. I think it's got like some slight twists from what I remember, but his moveset is very similar, and then the lightning actually makes things easier if you want to engage with it. I don't think I did lightning reversals on him though. I think by the time I got to Ishin, I was good doing them because you get some practice in a different level. But against Genichiro, I think I guess it's easy for me to say from the streaming perspective. I'm just sitting here. I'm not having to deal with learning that boss for the first time. The lightning reversals are easy and help you, but I think from what I remember when I first beat Genichiro, like, it's just very intimidating because you've already gotten so far fighting this boss that you're probably finding somewhat challenging right now, right? And then it's revealed he has a secret phase, and then there's suddenly lightning and storm all around you, and everything's just very overwhelming. Right, so I remember I actually just like tried to stay out of the way of the lightning attacks, and like I think I jumped away or I'd like get out of range and stuff, and I probably didn't do lightning reversals from what I recall in my go around against him. But you know, that's a strategy too. I just promise that the third phase is not as hard as it might feel like when it gets going, right? Yeah. Isaac Gavey, thanks for the 5. Of course, the sword of Luffy will outshine the shield of Luffy in combat. Sword and shield thing, I think that's stuff that fans come up with. Kit Gem 7, thanks for the 5. Hello, great stream, Morge. Thanks, man. I think Sanji's Conqueror's Haki will revolve around his stealth, and his final power-up will be his hair color and fire turning black. I mean, shit like that would be cool, especially if Sanji's fire gets another color. I think that'd be really cool. But if it's stuff revolving around his stealth, I would love to see him work on his observation, too. Like, I don't know. Why does he need the exoskeleton to do the same thing that Armament Haki already does? I just don't get it. Why didn't Oda just have him learn better Armament Haki too? Tiptio Treviso, thanks for the 2. With the Seraphim/Dami Reversi, they can grow trees. Yeah, I guess they can. They could just pop out some. Imagine Dami Reversi'd Kizaru or something. That'd be insane. You never know. Why does Sanji have to be a part of the worst generation for them to be equal? And I meant to say he would be a little behind. I think with Sanji, Oda's always liked to keep him out of the... He's like the Straw Hat's secret ace, I guess I would say. Because, like, Luffy and Zoro are the characters that are more infamous from the beginning of the story. Like, in East Blue, in East Blue, Zoro is the most notorious character among the Straw Hats, right? Like, he's the big name. And then Luffy's this up-and-comer that characters are starting to hear about, so they're the 2 big names in the Straw Hats. And then the cool thing about Sanji is it's like, he's this guy that's not really supposed to be strong. He's just a random cook. He's just a cook. That's the thing, like, who are you? I'm just a cook from a restaurant. But he's randomly, freakishly strong, right? So, like, he's kind of the Straw Hats, like, ace in the hole. I think especially pre-time skip, he shines in that role. where people don't know about Sanji, and then he turns out to be a big deal, right? In Alabasta, right? They knew about Luffy, Zoro, stuff like that, and then Sanji was actually the one character that Baroque Works didn't hear about, and that's why he got to excel as Mr. Prince. If you go back and read Alabasta, from Alabasta onwards, Luffy and Zoro have the two bounties, right? They get bounties before the rest of the Straw Hats. Sanji gets his bounty along with everybody else in Enies Lobby. So Oda kind of likes to have that gap in notoriety between Sanji versus Luffy and Zoro. But at the end of the day, once you get to Enies Lobby, it's like Sanji's still like, even though Zoro's joking, he's like, well, you're just Pirate B or whatever, that's the nickname he gives him during that arc. At the end of the day, Sanji fights an opponent just as strong as Zoro's and defeats him, right? So, and then Sanji gets his bounty, and sure, it's not like supernova level bounty, but that doesn't mean that Sanji's below all the supernovas in the grand scheme of things, because even though Sanji's not part of the worst generation, once we actually get to Wano, Sanji beats fucking Queen, who's the boss of a lot of, like, he beats Queen, who is the boss of, like, half the worst generation. Queen's above, like, ranked above in strength. X-Drake, Apu, Hawkins, that entire group that has been strong-armed into Kaido's army, right? So, like, and Sanji's definitely stronger than Killer. Right? I think there's no debate in my mind. Like, Killer has no good feats compared to Sanji. Sanji's stronger than most. Like, he's stronger than everybody in the worst generation, Luffy's quote-unquote rivals, except for obviously Luffy and Zoro, but you could Law and Kid are where it's debatable. I think most people would say Law and Kid. In my heart, I say Sanji, but I think Law and Kid are. I think Sanji will pass them up though, because unless Kid returns to the story, I don't know. That's its own whole discussion. But yeah, but Sanji's stronger than X-Drake, Hawkins, Apu, Capone Big, Killer, right? Bonnie, right? Uruj, we don't really know much about. Killer hurt Kaido, yeah, but with sound waves, which is not the same thing as like actually piercing Kaido's armor. It's a sonic attack. So he beat a character as strong as the guy who beat Zoro, but his bounty is lower. Interesting. Yeah, because Sanji's newer. That's not how bounties work. Sanji's newer to the scene. Zoro already had notoriety, because Zoro was a 60 million berry bounty pirate. Sanji was just brand new, so that's his first bounty. People are, like, the Marines are historically way tamer with their initial bounties than like that's just the way that they work, right? Like, fucking Boa Hancock only had a bounty of, like, 80 million. Not because she's weak, but it was just that was the first time that she was on the map, so they didn't do an insane bounty for her. That's the same case for like a lot of characters. Like Zoro beat Mr. One, and Zoro was stronger than Mr. One after Alabasta, but he didn't get a higher bounty than Mr. One. Sanji versus Kid is interesting. Could Kid just control Sanji because of his exoskeleton? Oh, yeah, that's actually very possible. But that's a matchup thing. That's not like who's stronger overall. Zoro was known as the Pirate Hunter. Yeah, Zoro just has a lot more history behind him. I'm kind of in the middle of the Zoro Sanji debates, which is just like, I think that um, I think that the gap is not as big as Zoro fans think, but I don't think they're neck and neck dead even at full strength like Sanji fans think. So that's where I fall. Tom says, Morge, by the way, I want to say Big Mom and or Kaido for my prediction, but couldn't fit it. Let's see. Big Mom slash Big Mom and or Kaido. Sure, we could do that. Do you know that Ragnar in kanji is written as something meaning iron, lightning slash thunder? So it does. Ragnar is what Loki used to freeze the Draugr, right? I would think. So I'm curious why it's lightning and not just all elements, but maybe it is all elements. I don't know. Brandon says, never mind, I'm back. Good to have you back, man. Yeah, now we're just on the Zoro Sanji debate stuff. Now it's just Zoro Sanji stuff. Okay, hold on. So we got some supers to catch up on. Tiptio Treviso, thanks for the 2 with the Seraphim. Oh no, we covered this. Oh, we don't have supers to catch up on. Okay, I guess we're good. I'd be very surprised if Ragnar didn't have all the elements. I mean, otherwise the freezing would be part of Loki's ability. If it's Fenrir, then maybe it's got something to do with the freezing or something. Did Loki ever meet Big Mom, or did they ever talk? Maybe during the whole Lola thing. More to do a top 30 or top 10 or whatever. I did, but that was before some crucial chapters, such as the whole Herald battle. So if I were to do it again, it would be pretty different. I'm actually not going to touch a top 30 until the end of Elbaf again, because too many things are up in the air. Let's start Mihawk versus Roger debates, says Mihawk the GOAT. Oda's going to pull some shit like Loki has a cold heart, says TomTom. Yeah, that's possible. We already have an Ice Wolf, says Brandon. Yeah, but, you know, like sometimes Oda repeats some abilities, but with different flavors. Yeah, I do believe the freezing is Ragnar's ability. It's very exciting if the freezing is Ragnar's ability, because it's just like, damn, that means that there's more shit that Loki... Because that's what's so crazy about the Ragnar situation, is that Ragnar is, on its own, from what we've seen so far, it's like top 3 strongest fruits that we've ever seen, right? Like, I mean, it's like way more powerful than the Gorogoro no Mi, way more powerful than Big Mom's fruit. Just the lightning and the ice alone is absurd, right? Like, because the lightning is insane scale, freezing is insane scale. I think the fact that it's like conscious, like it's alive, also makes it kind of crazy. Anyway, well, that's the squirrel, that's not the fruit. But the only fruits I'd be like from what I see, Ragnar is a fruit that's like, I would compare to the Guragura no Mi in power. I think the Nika fruit is probably supposed to be stronger than, like, the Nika fruit is weird because it's like a amazing fruit on, it's like a limitless fruit on paper, but then, you know, it's also partly, it's like, it comes down to how Luffy uses it. So it's a weird fruit to scale or whatever, right? Because, like, we know it's supposed to be a lot stronger than, you know, like Kaido's fruit, for example, but ultimately when you see Luffy and Kaido fight, it's kind of like Kaido's fruit's doing pretty good against it, you know? Obviously, that's because they got different people behind it, but, you know, Luffy's the best suited to use the Nika fruit. I'm going in circles here, but I know the Nika fruit on paper is probably supposed to be like a top 2 devil fruit in One Piece. Imu's fruit, obviously, is probably the strongest, right? So if we set those two aside, then we've also got the Yami Yami no Mi and the Gura Gura no Mi. But Ragnar feels just as strong as the Yami Yami no Mi or the Gura Gura no Mi to me. Yami Yami no Mi is like unfair because it's just really good against other fruits, so it's hard to rank that. The Gura Gura no Mi we've been told can destroy the world, but from what we've actually seen of it in action, Ragnar is just as good, if not better, right? So Ragnar is at worst a top 5 fruit in the series, right? Like top 5 fruit in existence. So the crazy, crazy thing to me is just that it's not even Loki's main ability. Like, that's his secondary ability. And Oda's actually hiding the first ability still because the first ability is so strong that it ends the world. So that's kind of unprecedented in terms of, like, a character's moveset. So I'm very excited to see Loki's actual fruit. Loris Burger, thanks for the 2. Loki, Sinmara, Luffy, Surtur, Ragnarok. I don't know what Sinmara means. Let's look up. I'm probably going to wrap stream soon because I'm getting a little hungry. Sinmara is a giantess considered a consort to Surtur. Luffy, I don't know about that. I don't know if Luffy's being shipped with Loki. Lil Emu, thanks for the 5. Luffy is weak to cuts. One of the world's strongest swordsmen is Nika's natural weakness. That's the unsung Luffy Zoro power dynamic. But Luffy's not weak to cuts. He just doesn't have he doesn't have immunity to it. Like, he's as weak to cuts as like a normal person would be weak to cuts. Does that make sense? Like, he's as weak to cuts as Shanks would be weak to cuts. He just does, like, rubber doesn't give a added bonus defense against cuts. Like, that's the beauty of rubber. Pretty much any blunt move, unless it's powered by Haki, just doesn't work on Luffy, right? Rubber just doesn't provide that auto immunity against cuts. So that's not a weakness. It just, Luffy doesn't have automatic protection against it. Does that make sense? So it's not quite the same thing. Newport's Poppy, thanks for being a Supernova member for 4 months. Monster Trio post Egghead bounty reveal. Oh, that's an interesting prediction. It's really shocking that we don't get new bounties after Egghead, but I think Oda just wants to space out the bounties a certain way. Mihawk the Goat, thanks for the 2. Yoru will be relative to Ragnar, maybe stronger. But that hurts the Mihawk agenda, because the whole idea is that Yoru, while a very good sword, doesn't have magic powers, right? Ragnar is a Ragnar is a bunch of, like, Ragnar is the magic weapon that people were joking that Enma is, you know? Well, no, a normal person has bones. Luffy's bones are rubber. I don't think that is technically true, but I don't think it's ever been implied that Luffy's, like, literally more susceptible to being cut than somebody who's not rubber, if that makes sense. And even if you want to get into that whole argument, then it's just like, well, Haki exists, so none of this really matters, right? It's just about whose Haki is stronger. It's the same way that Luffy's rubber doesn't matter anymore against blunt attacks because Haki exists, right? So, like, he is now prone to being hurt by blunt attacks just as much as cutting attacks, as long as the opponent's using Haki. Yeah, they're claiming Luffy killed Vegapunk on the news and shit. There should be new bounties. If Dorian Brogy got new bounties after Egghead, so should the Straw Hats. The Dorian Brogy bounties are the biggest BS I've ever seen because it's so bizarre. It feels like Oda just invented the concept of inflation in One Piece just for Dorian Brogy. Because it doesn't make sense otherwise. Because then it's like Brook should have a fucking 300 million berry bounty pre-time skip. Like, it doesn't make any fucking sense. I think Oda just realized that he had capped Dorian because Dorian Brogy were supposed to be a huge deal back in the day. Like, they were the next biggest threat on the ocean after Herald for, like, if you go back a century or something like that. So for their day, they should have been, like, yeah, billion berry bounty captains or whatever. And then Oda kind of realized that in retrospect, and he was like, no, I need to amp their bounties up to reflect that. But then it's like, wait, if you're doing that just for them, then what the fuck about all these other characters? Yeah, bounty inflation is so stupid it's not even funny, lol. Yeah, because it just raises a million questions. Because it's like, okay, so Roger died 20-ish years ago, and his bounty was 5.5 billion, right? Luffy's final bounty, let's pretend it's 5.6 billion. That means that if you account for inflation, Luffy actually never surpasses Roger's bounty. Oda should never have thrown that wrench in the works. I feel like he just came up with it when he got to Dorian Brogy and didn't think about how it applied to other things in the story. Bounty inflation is dumb. Every 5 years it goes up. Thanks for the 2 Tiptia. Yeah, Robin's bounty should be through the roof. Yeah, because like Robin was given that 79 million berry bounty 20 years ago. But then in the modern day, they then updated it to 80 million berry, which doesn't make any fucking sense. Maybe inflation is just really slow. It went up 10x over the last century. Right? Which is like, if you're setting that as the rate, then you have to be consistent, because Brook, that means like 50 years ago, right? So 50 years ago, bounty 5x, right? I know that inflation doesn't work in a straight line like that, but it's also got to be moderately like reasonable. Otherwise, unless Oda's just claiming that there was a huge inflation, like the whole economy of the world drastically changed like 80 or 90 years ago specifically, then it just doesn't make any sense. But what if Brook was that strong? He was very weak, which is precisely why he couldn't defeat Ryuma to get his shadow back. That's the whole plot of Thriller Bark. It was Brook's fighting skills, but placed into a body that was significantly stronger than Brook's. Therefore, he could not defeat him. You know, the whole point is that Brook was nowhere near as strong as pre-time skip Zoro. Brook was like shocked at how strong Zoro was pre-time skip. It was there 2022. Yeah. Yeah, Brook couldn't even get his shadow back. Well, Dark Dragon says we shouldn't be required to have these conversations. It's just a stupid concept in general. I agree. Yeah, it should be 200% McDudes. Yeah. But they only raised it by 1 million, so it doesn't really make sense. All right, everybody. Wait, could people consider it alive not get inflation since it's always changing anyway? But Dorian Brogy, were alive. I don't know. Anyway, they were alive and they had active bounties. All right, everybody. We are going to call it here. Thank you all very, very much for tuning in. I'm excited for One Piece to come back to hopefully a consistent schedule starting next week. And yeah, with that, I will talk to you all later. And definitely make sure to get in on the hoodies while you can, because it's the first 30 orders that get the 2 posters free. You will not find this style of hoodie anywhere else. So if you want to be one of the first people to get the Ice Fruit hoodie, then go check it out right now.